Hey, everybody, this is Storm Large. You are listening to U.S. Modernist Radio. Keep listening.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Back before there were interstates, which was a long, long time ago, there were smaller federal highways, often two-lane, that connected the east and west coasts. U.S. Route 66 was the most famous. Along the way, you'd find roadside motels, restaurants, and bars lit up with large neon signs and highly stylized buildings. Anyone remember when all the Arby's had that 30-foot-high cowboy hat sign in front of every store? That's the idea. Los Angeles was a hotbed of these buildings as post-World War II optimism generated cool-looking car washes, gas stations, burger joints, diners, bakeries, donut shops, and gas stations. 20 or so years later, those styles were considered junk, and then the demolitions began. Fortunately, appreciation and preservation for this low-cost, unique American glamour has grown, and today we talk with architectural photographer Ashok Sinha, author of Gas and Glamour, Roadside Architecture in Los Angeles. Later, special musical guest Tape 5 with Henrik. And now, here's your well-preserved host, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's said that you can't avoid death, and I disagree. I've avoided it for a long time, simply by not owning a motorcycle.
That's smart.
Not smoking, and eating more kale and broccoli. You don't care about any of this when you're young, of course, when your metabolism will overcome a 14-inch 3-topping pizza in about 3 hours, and then you're ready for another one. Or you can get drunk the night before midterms and still do well. Once you hit 40, however, the warranty on your body expires and it's time to pay attention. I don't believe in Santa Claus, and you want to know why? Because there are no fat old men. Let that sink in a second. There are no fat old men. Those men who make it to 95, the ones we see on the morning news, they're real thin. Medical research calls this caloric restriction, and it's coming out in all kinds of other ways. Today, we call it intermittent fasting. It's really interesting, and when Tom and I go to Palm Springs for Modernism Week every year, and we're living off a regimen of breakfast, no lunch, then evening appetizers and martinis, not real meals, I lose weight.
Speak for yourself.
Nutritionally, not so great, but it's the most fun and glorious diet plan ever. U.S. Modernist Radio takes 35 people to Palm Springs every February for the time of their modernist loving lives. If you'd like to join us for Modernism Week 2023 and drop a few pounds, drop me a note at george@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by modernist realtor Angela Roll.
In an adventure we are largely making up, Angela Roll was in the CIA science lab, washing beakers from another day of converting peanut butter into jet fuel, when suddenly a beaker of the thick brown goo broke, cutting her arm and covering her in highly classified chemicals not even available on eBay. As a warm glow came over her and soft violin theme music mysteriously began to play, she realized she had a superhero origin story. Suddenly, she instantly knew the right market value of any modernist house, as well as how to fix them up, where to get the materials, and who could do the work. Although ridiculed by other superheroes who could fly or be invisible or talk to fish, Angela put her superpowers to work closing sale after sale, combining her architectural training, which is a real thing, and nailing bids on the Price is Right. Angela Roll is your special agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com, that's ROEHL, or 919-995-0550.
Thanks, Tom. Born in Calcutta, Ashok Sinha is a New York-based architecture and fine art photographer and filmmaker. He studied at Columbia and NYU and has been published in the New York Times, Architectural Digest, and Interior Design. His photography has been exhibited at the Museum of the City of New York, the International Center of Photography, and the Royal Photographic Society. Ashok serves as co-chair of the Marketing and Communications Committee at AIA New York, and he is the author of Gas and Glamour, Roadside Architecture in Los Angeles, about the car culture and architectural advertising in LA during America's golden age of the automobile, which, by the way, is also the golden age of modernist houses. Welcome, Ashok.
Hi there, George. How are you?
So I have to ask, starting out, given this book, which is filled with these lovely photos of places around LA, all enabled by the explosion of the car culture, what is your favorite car?
That's a tough one. I have to say there are many, but one comes to mind is a 55 T-Bird.
Yeah.
Was that the one with the fins?
That has some fins, but we're used to seeing the 57. The 55 is a rarer one.
Okay.
And it has a distinctive front end that's different and does have fins for sure.
Was this one that was a convertible, or did it have a solid roof?
It was a convertible.
Okay. Yeah. All those movies with convertible Thunderbirds in the 50s and 60s featured those cars.
Yeah.
And what about more currently? What do you like these days to drive around?
Another tough one. My favorites are, I like German cars. However, I've been looking at, I'm going to be driving an Alfa Romeo soon, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm a Benz guy, so I like Mercedes-Benzes over, say, BMWs.
Okay. Yeah, I have a Mini Cooper. I think this is my fourth one over the years.
Wow.
And
wow.
they are wonderfully photographic. They have such appeal.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of British cars, I do like an MG, so I love one of those if I could lay my hands on one.
Weren't MGs the one that never worked, like you always had to be repairing them?
Back in the day.
Yeah. It was either MGs or Triumphs. They were always broken.
Triumphs were really, they just left parts as you drove them.
Strewn about the highway.
Yep.
True. I mean, I did see a nice olive green MG recently, and I was like, man, I wish I could drive that one. But, oh well, maybe someday.
So what Alfa Romeo are you going to get to drive?
I'm going to drive the new Giulia. I've been hearing good things about them, so I'm going to go to the West Coast pretty soon, and I'll drive that for about a month or so and see how it goes.
Oh, what a lucky job you have.
Yeah. Now, this book is one of the few books about architecture that I would say is happy. You read through this book, you can't help but feel good looking at these different buildings. Particularly on the cover, is that the original McDonald's you have on the cover?
Yeah, so that's the oldest surviving McDonald's, and it is an original from 1953. That was because this was owned by the brothers and not by the corporation, so it survived demolition, and it's fully original.
And where is it?
It's in the city of Downey in Los Angeles. Los Angeles obviously made up of many different little cities and municipalities, and it's in Downey. You know, it's one of those things that if you know where it is, you go. Otherwise, you tend to skip, but definitely not to be missed.
And this is a McDonald's that was all takeout, as they were originally.
Correct. It has that classic, they call it the walk-up McDonald's. And you can see that fishbowl structure where it shows off the McDonald's efficiency. You walk up and you order a burger. In fact, if you notice recently, McDonald's has been going back to its design. Some of the newer ones that have opened up have this exact same design or the elements of it. Similar to the original one.
The efficiency was part of the appeal to Ray Kroc when he first met the brothers, that, you know, they could crank out the burgers and the shakes in no time flat. So to put that on display would be smart marketing. Yeah,
and that's what the architecture was all about in terms of smart marketing, using architecture as a means to show off either efficiency in this case or design and the signage to bring you into these establishments. So, yeah, it's all part of that.
Another happy photo in this book is of the donut hole, which looks like it's a convenience store. What is that all about?
That is a happy building. Every time I drive by it, no matter when or what mood I'm in, it puts a smile on my face. It is exactly what it's advertising here. It is the donut shop, the coffee shop, and you can drive through it if you're crazy like me, as many times as you want, and maybe order one donut. But it's a fun feeling. The donuts are good, the coffee is good, and you come out on the other side feeling happy and satisfied.
And where is this located?
This is in East Los Angeles in the city of La Puente.
And I noticed in the book you say, local lore says that newlyweds visit the bakery as a fertility rite.
Yes.
Because, folks, I just imagine here, in this a little bit PG-rated description, that you're driving your truck through this giant tunnel, and you get why they're doing it as a fertility ritual.
A tunnel of love?
Yes, a tunnel of donut love.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Whatever works, I guess. But
right.
It was an interesting fact we found out while making this book, and I said we have to put it in there.
You've been doing photography a long time, Ashok. What are some of the challenges of shooting architecture versus, say, art?
I think the thing about architecture is it's a level of technical mastery in terms of photographing a building, giving it its proper recognition, making a three-dimensional structure look as appealing in a 2D medium such as a photograph, showing its place in the environment, showing its use, the scale, being very, very meticulous and measured, yet keeping the formality of it. So there are many different things, and also showing the design intent. So as much as there is freedom in expressing that as an artist, you're also bound by what this building or what the structure is about. So you are showing that effectively through the photograph. In fine art photography, I would say it's left up to your interpretation of a sense of emotion or a feeling, which is there in architectural photography, but it's just shown differently.
I got to eat recently at Norm's in L.A., which is a fabulous diner, and it's in your book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's received, I think, several historic protections, right?
Correct. And it's actually one of those stories where it's a success story because it was going to be demolished. And the city and Los Angeles Conservancy got together and essentially petitioned for it to be preserved as a landmark, as a local landmark, historical landmark, and it got saved. So not only do we have an establishment which is kind of a cornerstone of the neighborhood, you have this great design from that era, and you can experience that as it was when it was first built. So I think that's a true success story of a building like this being preserved for the neighborhood and for others to see and experience.
We've had several guests on the show over the years that have talked about Googie architecture. So is that the same as what you have in the book, or is it different?
Well, my book is a mixture of, there are many buildings that are Googie. There are some buildings like the Donut Hall, which is known as programmatic architecture, essentially. The building is about the product that it's selling. There are streamlined modern buildings in the book. There are buildings in the book that don't fit any category. So it's a mix of different architectural styles. However, Googie being the predominant feature of architecture in this kind of vernacular architecture of the roadside in those days, there are many buildings which fit that criteria.
And I should make sure that we explain what Googie is.
Sure.
The first time we brought it up, I was like, are they making this up?
Tell us about Googie, Ashok.
It started off with this coffee shop that was known as Googie's, and essentially there was this architectural style or element which featured these space-age-looking structures, had these distinct jagged edges or these iconic signage, and essentially it was a derogatory term initially, and then it sort of became more popular and became a little fashionable later on after the fact. And ever since, that type or style of architecture, the Jetsons kind of space-age architecture from that era, has been known as Googie.
And a lot of these buildings were associated with food in some way. Why was that?
Yeah, if you think of that era where the car became a central part of your everyday life, and you would essentially be going places. This is something new to you. You're traveling all the time. You're in the car, and you're seeing the world through the car window, the windshield. And food being such an important part of everyday life, naturally, the buildings that were being built in these newfound neighborhoods, or newly built suburbs, a lot of them were food establishments where architecture, design, signage were essentially being used as billboards. And you would drive by them, and these establishments would try to get you in. So the natural manifestation of this kind of design architecture was food establishments, because it was so common for this new lifestyle, in a sense. This quick grab-and-go kind of culture. So these food establishments are a big part of everyday life.
On the back cover of the book, there's a photo of Bob's Big Boy. And it's got this gigantic sign. It must be 40 feet tall, with lots of neon. I mean, it's a huge structure in itself. And I guess that was the way they would attract attention from people driving down the road.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I photograph these buildings at night, because signage and neon, the use of neon in the signage was so important to attract your attention as you're driving by. Imagine you're not driving that fast. You're driving, these are these what we call surface streets in Los Angeles. These are these long local highways. I wouldn't say highways per se, but these
feeder
busy
roads.
streets. Yeah, that connect neighborhoods within Los Angeles. So you're not going as fast as a freeway, but you're going around 35, 40 miles an hour. Neon was an important element of essentially attracting your attention. So signage like the Bob's was a big part of it.
Oh, sorry, I got distracted here by looking at this book.
No.
This is such a happy book, Ashok. One of my favorite pictures here, just architecturally and just because it makes me smile, is the Bowlium, which is a bowling lane. And it's got these arcing, porticos, would you call them, out front?
Yeah, the Bowlium is another one where these concrete arches were an important element of this sort of futuristic space age architecture. It's something as simple as a bowling alley taken to a whole different level, because as these suburbs were happening and the cities were expanding, people realized that, these planners realized people needed something to do for recreation. So they started building these bowling alleys next to these big arteries, roadways, where there was a lot of traffic. So the design of the building was important to showcase what was being done there, and for you to pull into the parking lot, for example, in this case, Holt Boulevard, which is very busy, runs right next to it, and you would see it right from the street.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've been driving around big box centers, shopping centers and places. Where is that place? Because they all look the same, and then you spot it. That's the first thing you see. You're not looking for the street number. It's the architecture. It's the sign.
Yeah, absolutely. I see things visually, and I think most of us do remember a lot of things visually. I call it this visual messaging of neighborhoods, and I think these buildings like these were important elements of that. And to make these neighborhoods unique, you would probably remember, like, oh, yeah, the Bowlium is in that part of town, that kind of thing.
Right. It would even be a landmark for somebody directing somebody to somewhere else. Well, it's just past the Bowlium,
Yep, exactly. I mean, you see that now. Before the advent of Google Maps, for example, we used to always give directions like that. And now, even now, say when you use a app-based navigation aid, they tell you, oh, make a right and you'll see this thing at the corner, that kind of a landmark kind of thing. So it's important in terms of navigating through a town or city, in this case, Los Angeles.
We talked earlier about Arby's and their big cowboy hat sign. And, of course, Holiday Inn had their enormous big green and yellow neon sign. There are only a few of those left around the country. Are you aware of any companies in this day and age, Ashok, that are using the large or unusual signs to bring people in?
As far as this book goes, I point out a couple of locations like that. One, this chain no longer exists, but there used to be a chain called Van de Kamp's Holland Dutch Bakery, and they use these big windmills on their locations.
Oh, that'll work.
Yeah, to bring you in. And I have a picture in the book, which is now at Denny's, actually, but they kept the windmill. And then there's, donut locations as Randy's Donuts. It's pretty famous because it's been shown in all movies. When you see that donut, you probably think of Randy's. So as far as the book goes, I can think of these two locations. In terms of modern-day corporations, the McDonald's arches are pretty universal.
But they're so small now.
Yeah,
I mean,
they've mostly been reduced to signs.
Yeah, I mean, you might see one that's up in the air by the interstate, but...
The Best Buy chain, where they're angled blue buildings, we're sort of doing that.
A little bit, yeah. I would love to see a coffee shop come out and do that nationally. You know, where this huge sign all lit up at night that will bring people to come in.
But then you have city councils with their sign ordinances, you know, and they're trying to prevent all that stuff. They don't want that garish look. So you're sometimes fighting City Hall these days.
True. I can only dream.
Yeah.
Now, Ashok, I understand you're not much of a fan of glass buildings. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm not much of a fan because I see too much of glass around us these days. I think there are some inherent issues I find with glass, with not only energy-related issues. I mean, there are issues such as birds flying into them, and then the fact that the sunlight reflects off of them and creates these consequences in neighborhoods where there's glare and all that kind of stuff. It just ruins the natural fabric of a community in terms of the design. So I'm not but however, I would say, though, the use of glass in certain kind of buildings is important when it comes to design. In fact, in my book, I do point out certain buildings. In fact, most of them had a very interesting use of glass to draw you in, such as these diners and restaurants. They would use glass to showcase the warm interiors. So imagine you're driving by and you're like, oh, I'd love to stop by and go inside. Or even a car dealership, which brought the outside in by showcasing what they had on display. I mean, there is use of glass done tastefully and purposefully versus just glass.
Yeah, because, you know, you see some buildings and it's just all glass and there's no personality whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, I think currently we see a lot of those where just glass is being used willy-nilly without any design thinking behind it and why it's being used in the first place. The other thing I find ironic is a lot of these places, these buildings, especially the residential ones, where I'm sure they're being sold as a glass house in the sky, but then when you actually live there, your personal life is on public display. So the people living there, unfortunately, have to pull the screens down all the time. So it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah. So let's say that I'm a person that doesn't take good photos, which I am. And I'm driving around L.A. and I want to go take a picture of one of the buildings in your book. What advice can you give me about how to take a better photo of, say, that McDonald's in Downey?
That's a good one. I mean, the thing is, the beauty is that we have the tools available now that makes everyone a photographer. But to be a better photographer, I think I'm a firm believer in, I'm not a technician, I'm an artist. So you can interpret that building in your photograph the way you see it. So perhaps it's not the entire building for you. Maybe it's the arches that are important. Maybe it's the typography that's important. Maybe you're telling a certain story through your photograph. So you first have to choose what you want your picture to tell and then approach it that way. If you're photographing architecture, say, for example, you I would say at the very least have a tripod. But if you don't have a tripod, try to have the grid lines in your camera so that you can judge how the verticals are lining up. That kind of stuff, I think, would be the absolute minimum requirements. And then we can get into crazy technical details, but I don't think if you're just casually driving around, I don't think you'd have the opportunity or the time to do all that.
Well, I've learned one tip from you, and that's go to these places at night.
That's right. I mean, if you want to see these buildings in their true glory, and if you want to catch, which we call the hero shot, the magic dusk shot, I mean, that would elevate your pictures quite a bit.
Right. So dusk is really probably the key time when there's still a little bit of landscape visible, but the lights are on.
Absolutely. I mean, you can test it out on any building. I mean, you see many architectural photographs. In fact, on commercial shoots, we always have a dusk shot where you have some semblance of light in the sky and you photograph the building with its lights on, and you can see how it literally becomes a whole thing of its own at that time. However, as in this book, I've had some happy accidents where I did not photograph the building for whatever reason at that time, and I had no choice but to photograph it against a very black sky. And I would say I was pleasantly surprised. And after that one accident I had, the happy accident, I said, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to use it as a way to tell my story. Like the book is organized, if you notice, from early dusk to nighttime. So it also tells
I didn't notice that, but now I will.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
The book is Gas and Glamour, Roadside Architecture in Los Angeles. It is a great, happy gift to give anybody. Thanks for joining us, Ashok.
Thank you very much, George.
You can learn more at gasandglamour.com.
Avenue du Gard.
Henrik Wager, a man who loves hats, was born in Manchester, England, and studied at Birmingham University in the School of Performing Arts and the Conservatory. He sang with the National Youth Choir in Great Britain from 1986 to 1991. He then toured the world with the a cappella band The Flying Pickets before coming to Germany in 2000 to found a music production company and work in songwriting, producing, and singing. He's played roles in film and musical theater and is the lead singer of the electro swing band Tape 5 and the progressive rock band Saris. Welcome, Henrik.
Nice to be here. Thank you, George.
So how did Tape 5 get started, and how did you get the name?
Well, I used to jump across from London to Germany, to Cologne in Germany, very often at the end of the 90s to work with Martin Stratthausen, who was a producer and a writer and multi-instrumentalist. And we were just working on some more sort of pop-orientated tracks. And from that, we kind of evolved to doing one song, which you'll be playing a bit later, which had a kind of a retro vibe, using samples and a lot of sort of atmospheric sounds. And I suppose you could say that that was the birth point of Tape 5, when we were actually, our sound and our style and our objectives were born.
Henrik, you are a man of many hats. Our researcher delved into your hat history, fortunately not your browser history. Tell us about all the hats you have and how you've developed this collection.
Well, I mean, if you're going to do a bit of swing style music, you certainly have a license to thrill with hats.
Yes,
to visit the haberdasher, so to speak.
Exactly. I mean, I have to say, when I was a cappellaing back in the 90s, I went through a trouser phase. And I think it's just kind of one of those things that kind of just gets pushed onto something else. But the hat thing is... it's great. I think it suits you when you're getting a bit older and you want to express yourself in a different kind of way. No knocking a good hat is what I say.
Oh, exactly. Henrik, I used to do swing dancing all the time in the 90s.
Right.
So I got married and I kind of missed the memo on electro swing. When did that movement get started?
Well, I mean, that's something probably from around the mid-noughties, as we call them.
Yes, the noughties. That's good.
The noughties. And it kind of evolved out of, I suppose, in many ways, Tape 5 became known as quite a force in electro swing. And it grew out of the movement of new jazz and lounge styles that were taking a modern take on old sounds, but to then make that more danceable, I think people had an appetite for the energy, the high energy of the 20s and the 30s, and that kind of real upbeat ballroom style of dancing. And I think that it kind of came out of that. And since then, it's been a growing market. It's, I would call it a niche market. It's not up there in your main sort of Taylor Swift pop radio play, but it certainly is getting a bigger coverage and a growing fan base just because it's fun and people want to have fun these days.
I think you might be able to persuade Adele to do it.
You think so?
She might do a crossover. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's doing all these fun things now.
Well, that's true.
I could see her doing an electro swing song.
I think that she'd have to get a little bit away from singing songs about her own life experiences and
sad
singing
songs.
a bit more.
Yes.
Yeah, sing a bit more like creating little movie scenes. That's what we work on. That's our Tape 5's approach to writing songs. You create little movie scenes where you close your eyes, you listen to the music, and you're transported somewhere else.
Well, you can close your eyes in this next song, a great example of electro swing, and be transported to the 40s. Here's Tape 5 with Bad Boy, Good Man.
Ready? 1,
if you don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. First dance is always free. Bad boy, I need to dance. If you don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. First dance is always free. Sack swings a thing with a ring-a-ding-ding, and I get wings when I sing. Ragtime, reason and rhyme, I'm the reason you're divine. Rumba, mambo, Latin samba, the ladies in the house sing. Bad boy, I need to dance. If I don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. First dance is always free. Bad boy, I need to dance. If I don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. If I don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. I'm a bad boy. I'm a bad boy. I'm a bad boy, I need to dance. If I don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. Bad boy, I need to dance. If I don't dance, no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. First dance is always free. I'll be your sugar daddy. Oh, yes, Mr. Demetrius, solo clarinet. Bad boy, I need to dance.
Bad boy, good man. That's a split personality right there. Is that you, Henrik?
Well, you know, we all live on both sides of the coin, as they say.
I guess we do.
Now, if I recall correctly, Mr. Demetrios gets called out in several of your tunes, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He's our wonderful Ukrainian clarinetist and saxophonist. And when in doubt, just shout out his name. He's always there.
Yeah.
So.
Everyone needs a friend named Mr. Demetrios.
Right.
Now, you are also an actor as well as a musician. You were in the 1998 film Cousin Betty, which I believe was originally written by Balzac in 1846. I missed that movie completely, Henrik. What was it about?
Most people miss that movie. It's a kind of a costume drama, and I was a singer in it. And it had a great cast, though. But it's one of those things you can check out one day when it's very rainy. When it's very rainy.
When the storms are coming in, check out Cousin
exactly.
Betty. Yeah.
Just before the electricity cuts out.
Yeah.
Now, this next song would fit in very well with a European bank heist film. Just imagine Jason Statham and Gal Gadot driving up to the casino, the one they're just about to rob for $400 million, in a special edition Ferrari. This is the song they would be playing. Tape 5 with Avenue de Gare.
Avenue du Gard. Avenue du Gard.
Cocktails, Istanbul to Amsterdam. Emails, naughty pictures are a telegram. Some days I'm taking everything I can. Oh, hot shot, Aeroflot, a cabriolet. Night spot, me and you ain't time to play. What you got, baby? Let me hear you say. I feel like what you see. Oh yeah. You got me walking on air. I see. 'Cause I need your company. Oh yeah.
Avenue du Gard.
I feel like what you see. You got me walking on air. I see. 'Cause I need your company. Oh yeah.
Avenue du Gard. Avenue du Gard. Gard, Gard. Avenue du Gard.
Wow.
You know, when I hear a song like this, I just want to put on my tux, climb into somebody's Gulfstream, fly to Paris, and start smoking.
That's what it's about. It's about movies, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody's got those movies in their heads. The cabrio driving down some curvy road in the Alps down to the Mediterranean somewhere. And,
right.
And it's all about painting those kind of pictures. And Martin Stradhausen, the producer of Tape 5, he's great. He comes up with these crazy things. I mean, half of the samples in that song, he was actually connecting an old radio up to his radiator to get a better antennae signal. And he was picking up random things from old pirate radio stations back in the 80s and the 90s.
Wow.
those actually were some of the samples that you just heard in that song.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get these crazy, where the inspiration comes from, who knows? But the important thing is that it takes you in a different direction. And
It reminds me a little bit of Art of Noise from the 80s.
Yeah.
They would, use samples and make peppy songs, some of them.
Well, exactly. And it's the kind of the way that you puzzle it together. It's got to surprise you. A lot of the sampling in the 90s became very predictable. It was just like you take a song that someone else had heard of, and then you just use that to try to sell your own material. But I think that the creative use of samples, there's still so much to harvest from the sample as an art form. Right. But you just have to be a little bit, think a little bit out of the box and a bit left field, and you come up with all sorts of crazy stuff.
So, Henrik, as the pandemic ceases, are you guys going on tour? I would love to see you perform somewhere.
That's the big question. We've just been finishing off a new EP that came out last December. And we're looking to putting together a live show. But the thing is, with the pandemic, it's kind of dragged on so long now that people are a little uncertain about how to actually pick up the momentum again. So a lot of artists like ourselves, we're using the time to rethink the format and how we'd like to present ourselves. And I think that the one thing what's definitely going to be true in the future is people will be more economical with how they tour products and bands and sounds and their music, because you can't just these days take 8 musicians, throw them in a plane and hope that you're going to cover your costs.
Right.
Hard times are ahead, but I'm sure that we'll get through there.
Well, if anybody can pick up momentum, it sounds like it would be you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a compliment. Thank you.
And I can't wait to see the hats.
Well, I shall start collecting now.
Thank you so much, Henrik.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by modernist realtor Angela Roll. Okay, Tom, wink us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 12,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Rogue archivist Carrie Cesarino researches guests while dreaming of driving down Route 66 in a 69 Mustang convertible, the wind in her hair, Harry Connick Jr. on the radio, and her family dining peacefully at a Chick-fil-A thousands of miles behind her mom. Don't worry, kid, she's coming back. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George, and I'll be back soon with another Looking for Adventure. Head out on the highway, neon and burgers edition of U.S. Modernist Radio. Born to be wild.